I started writing a little story about what would happen if Venom symbiotes invaded the My Hero Academia universe. And this story, of course, was to go along with some designs that I was drawing up. See, recently, one of my personal favorite artists, Patrick Brown, did a bunch of promo art for a Marvel event coming up called Spider-Man Maximum Venom, in which a whole bunch of different characters are getting symbiotes on them and getting symbiote-style redesigns. It was particularly cool seeing this come out of one of my favorite artists, and my initial response was, of course, this is super awesome, but then my follow-up thought was, it would be even cooler if this wasn't limited to Marvel characters. So I decided to take some My Hero Academia characters and draw what they would look like if they were taken over by the Venom symbiote. By the way, the story is set just after Season 3, so there's no spoilers for Season 4. But I tried to write this in a way where you could enjoy it even if you've never seen or read My Hero Academia, and even if you have no idea who Venom is. So without further ado, let's get right into the story and artwork. The class of 1A was off for the weekend. None of them had been called into their work studies, and on this rare occasion, all of them were caught up on their classwork. Besides, of course, Todoroki and Bakugo, who were off to continue training to retake their provisional licensing exam. And of course, they were both a little bit bitter that they were the only ones without some free time. Bakugo was particularly bitter at Midoriya, who was ignoring his weekend off and deciding to go spend the weekend training. Not only was he throwing away his limited free time, but he was taking more time to improve and potentially get that much better than Bakugo. As the whole class was headed out to go about their weekends, there was a quiet pop in the air above the UA courtyard. They all looked up just in time to see this object crash down before them. It wasn't a massive impact, the ground didn't shatter or explode, but in the spot of the crash, there was a little pile of dark goop. At first, nothing happened, they all just looked at it unsure of what to do. But then, after a moment, it lurched a part of itself up, as if raising a head to look at the class. The strand of goop panned as if looking at all of them, analyzing them, and only stopped when it was pointed at Bakugo. It stayed staring at him, slightly shifting and writhing, but kept pointing towards Bakugo. "Yeah, well, what are you looking at, you purple snot?" Bakugo cried with no patience at all, and not so secretly hoping that this was going to turn into a fight. Despite urges from his peers to stop, he marched towards the thing and raised a hand, ready to blast it. "You got 5 seconds to state your business before I annihilate you!" But it didn't take 5 seconds. The goop, in a flash, lunged up onto Bakugo and started spreading across his body. He thrashed and flailed, trying to get it off him, but as it covered more and more of him, his movement slowed. A voice spoke, but only to him. He glanced back at his worried classmates, as the goop covered the rest of his body and changed him into a larger, sharp-toothed, warped version of his former self. Midoriya yelled out, "Bakugo, are you okay? Say something!" Bakugo responded, but not to Midoriya. "You're right," he muttered. "I should just kill him now, shouldn't I? And you can help me, can't you?" The class was confused, but they didn't have time to think. With a shrill cry, Bakugo fired a blast behind him and launched himself straight towards Midoriya, ready to strike. Midoriya lunged out of the way and kept dodging as the warped version of his classmate swung claws and fired explosions right at him with a speed and force that none of them had seen out of Bakugo before. Midoriya yelled out to him as he dodged, "Bakugo, what's that thing doing to you? Please stop! We can't help you if we don't know what—" Boom! He was cut off by a massive explosion straight to the face. He fired back across the schoolyard, slamming to the ground and rolling to a stop. Uraraka ran over to him and tried to protect him from another blow. Bakugo was coming in fast, teeth bared, claws out. But before he could reach them, a wall of ice collided with Bakugo from the side. It pushed him away while simultaneously sealing up part of his body in the shards. He thrashed and clawed and tried to tear his way out. The source of the ice, Todoroki, marched towards Bakugo with a hand raised. "Settle down, Bakugo, we'll figure out what that thing is and get you fixed up. But for now, I'm gonna have to freeze you for safety." Bakugo didn't seem to be listening. He responded, but again, not to anyone that the students could see. He seemed to be talking to himself. "You're right. He has great anger too. Yes, that's a great idea." Bakugo's goop-covered body warped again, and a large glop of the mass launched off him straight at Todoroki. It moved at way faster speed than anyone expected, and it collided with Todoroki and instantly started spreading across his body. He pulled at the thing, trying to get it off and trying to stay calm, but the more it spread across his body, the more he could feel this presence in his mind. "It's so angry!" he yelled to his fellow students, all still trying to get a grasp on what was going on. Luckily, Todoroki had a bit more willpower than Bakugo. He had a fighting chance. The thing was spreading slower than it had on Bakugo. Todoroki tried to use his powers, attempting to freeze it off and burn it off. The ice seemed to do very little, but the fire seemed to be staving it off for a bit. The bigger he made the flame in his hand, the more the thing seemed to retreat. But then the retreating stopped. It's as if the thing had gotten used to the flame, and then it spread down onto his hand and started taking over the rest of him. The fire even started to glow a darker shade as the thing took over the rest of Todoroki's body. Just before it had completed, he yelled out, "Stay back! It's feeding on my rage!" But finally his old self was gone. With new demonic eyes, he looked up and in a mutated voice cried, "And we want to feed on all of your rage!" With that, dozens more glops fired off of Todoroki's body and started slithering towards the other students. "Get up!" Uraraka cried, pulling Midoriya to his feet. Still largely confused by the situation, the two ran. Looking back, they could see that their other classmates were all attempting to flee as well. None of them knew what they could do against an opponent that they couldn't touch, so for now the best option was to run and regroup later and try and figure out what was going on. As Midoriya and Uraraka were approaching the edge of the courtyard, they heard a massive explosion behind them, followed by a cry that seemed to be getting louder and louder. "Deku!" Barreling in from behind them with shards of ice still falling from his body, Bakugo charged at the two. "How is he moving so fast?" Uraraka asked, trying to move faster. "That thing must be enhancing his quirk somehow," Midoriya cried. "You've got that right, Deku!" Bakugo launched himself in front of them, cutting off their retreat. "You could take me before, Deku, but with the symbiote on my side, there's no way you can stop me." Before Midoriya could respond, Bakugo was at his throat, pummeling him with slashes and claws and explosions. "Bakugo, please stop this. I know you can hear me. I don't want to fight you like this." "Then you can die like this." Bakugo got Midoriya to the ground and raised a claw that suddenly doubled in size. He started his swing, but BAM! A massive tree branch whacked him from the side and he flew across the courtyard again. Uraraka threw the branch after him and once more helped Midoriya up. But their victory was short-lived. Bakugo in an instant was back on his feet and headed towards them. "I've got an idea," Uraraka said, "but if it doesn't work, you have to keep running." Before Midoriya could protest, she ran straight at Bakugo. He lunged at her. She ducked under him, but managed to get a hand on him. She activated her quirk and he started floating up into the air. But a piece of him had stayed with her. A small bit of the symbiote was on Uraraka's hand and instantly started to spread. She tried pulling at it, leaping away, everything she could think of to try and get the thing off, but it spread and spread, got bigger and bigger. From her hands to her head to her torso to her feet. Soon enough, she was completely covered, and her body, like Bakugo's and Todoroki's, was warped into a strange alien version of her former self. But she didn't attack anyone. She just stood there, looking at her hands. And Midoriya hadn't listened to her. He hadn't run, he just stood there, staring at her. Frozen in place, he said, "Ochaco? Are you okay?" There was a moment before she responded. But finally she said, I think so." Midoriya walked towards Uraraka cautiously. "Don't come closer," she yelled. I think I can control it, but it's so angry. What is it? It's from another world. Its kind survives by attaching to a host. It makes them stronger and better, but also..." Her face contorted into an angry snarl. "No! He's my friend!" She was no longer addressing Midoriya. "Ochaco, what's it saying? What's it doing?" "You're right," she said in a more mutated voice. "He is a distraction." "Ochaco, please, fight it, you can do this!" But she was too far gone. She lunged into the air with her eyes set on Midoriya. This doesn't make any sense, Midoriya thought to himself. If that thing can spread on contact, why didn't it come onto me when Bakugo had me? Ochaco soared across the courtyard, flying with incredible speed. She spun through the air and shot down straight towards him. Just as she was close, Claude raised. She suddenly yelled, "No!" She retreated her hand and spun out, hitting the ground. I won't let it beat me! You don't have to! A familiar voice snarled from the side. Bakugo, with tendrils lurching from his body, holding him to the ground, keeping him from floating away, lumbered towards them. Let us join you. Let us make you better. Out of nowhere, a pillar of ice shot at Midoriya, trapping part of his body inside it. He looked back to see the mutated Todoroki and a bunch of his other classmates, covered in the goop. Some of them approached him as if ready for a fight. You have to run, Uraraka yelled. She lunged at Bakugo and started fighting them off. She's controlling it? Midoriya thought. But for how long? He smashed his way out of the ice and was ready to run, but didn't. He noticed that, well, some of his other classmates, they were covered in the goop, but they still seemed to be struggling, not yet overtaken by rage. Maybe they wouldn't all be. Those things started by targeting the angriest people. Maybe the less anger you have, the harder it is for them to control you. Midoriya had no idea how likely it was, but he had to go with that idea. And maybe, if you can control your anger like Ochaco's doing, you can control this thing. Midoriya saw more glops of the symbiote heading out across the courtyard. I need to know more about this thing. And with everyone else enhanced, I can't fight them off all on my own. He sprinted towards one of the searching glops of goop. He cut it off, but it didn't leap onto him like it had the others. It just stayed in place as if it was analyzing him. What is it? Am I not angry enough for you? It still did nothing. Well, too bad. He shoved his hand inside of it, and seemingly reluctantly, the goop started to spread across his body. Midoriya was scared. He could feel his body changing and warping, claws stretching from his hand. He was growing and enhancing, but he could also feel the anger starting to build. The symbiote wrapped its way around the rest of his body, and for a moment nothing. Before Midoriya finally said, "What are you?" As if echoing inside of his head, the thing said, "We are Venom." So, what happens next? Admittedly, I don't really know, but if you want the sequel and you want to find out what happens next, I am very happy to write the follow-up and do another round of venomized My Hero Academia characters, so make sure to leave a like to cast your vote that you do want another round of this, or leave suggestions for what other kind of pop culture crossovers you want. I do the Overwatch D&D episodes, I've done Spider-Man villains in Star Wars, and these are my favorite kinds of episodes to do, and I had a lot of fun writing this story, so maybe I'll push even more into story-focused stuff if people like this. But anyway, that's all for this episode. I'm Christian Pearson, this has been Popcross Studios, home of the nerdiest art videos on YouTube, and I will see you all in the new decade, I guess.